Do you think you truly know the people around you? You believe you can sense when someone is toxic, when an energy feels heavy, or when a behavior crosses the line of what's acceptable. But what if I told you that the real dangers aren't obvious? That the most destructive people are often charming, kind, even family. And while you're busy guarding yourself from the obvious villains, you might be opening the door of your mind to something far more dangerous. The unconscious of others quietly invading your own. That's not just poetic language, it's a psychological reality. Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers of modern psychology, dedicated his life to helping us see this hidden truth. Most people move through life unaware of the unseen forces shaping their emotions, relationships, and even their sense of self. And while you're out here trying to be kind, trying to be good, trying to keep the peace, there are people, some very close to you, who are unknowingly taking up space in your mind and soul. This isn't about blame, it's about awareness. Stoic philosophy teaches us to master the self, to guard our inner world as fiercely as a soldier guards the gates of a city. Because once you let unconscious energy in, once you start playing a role in someone else's unresolved story, you begin losing touch with who you are. And the worst part? You don't even notice until the damage is already done. So today, we're going to expose the 6 most dangerous personality types Carl Jung warned us about. These aren't your typical villains. They don't shout, they don't fight, they infect, slowly, silently, deeply. But once you understand their patterns, you reclaim your power, you take back your peace. If that sounds like the kind of growth and clarity you're here for, then do me one simple favor. If you appreciate what we're building here, if this message resonates, hit that subscribe button. That one small click helps this channel reach the people who need it most, and it allows me to keep giving you real tools for building unshakable inner strength. Some people walk into a room and instantly change the air, not with noise, not with chaos, but with weight. A heaviness that wasn't there before. You were fine a moment ago, calm, centered, maybe even peaceful. But suddenly, after a conversation with them, you feel foggy, drained, uneasy in a way that sleep can't fix, and you can't explain why. These are the people who don't throw stones, they hand you theirs, quietly, subtly, wrapped in the velvet of vulnerability or the silk of victimhood. You don't even see the transfer happen. All you know is that now you feel wrong. You feel like the villain. You feel responsible. You didn't yell. You didn't insult. You were just listening, trying to be a good friend, a kind soul. But somehow you're left holding a burden that was never yours to carry. These people rarely raise their voice. They don't need to, because their weapon isn't loud, it's invisible, it's guilt. And guilt works like a charm. Why? Because it slips past your defenses. It wears the mask of emotional honesty. But make no mistake, it's not about sharing, it's about offloading. Carl Jung had a name for this: projection. When someone refuses to face their inner wounds, their shame, their rage, their fear, they toss those unclaimed emotions onto the nearest safe target. And often, that target is the person who seems emotionally grounded, the listener, the healer, the one who holds space. In other words, you. Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But here's the twist. Some people flip that process. Instead of using their discomfort to grow, they make it your fault. They won't ask, "Why am I hurting?" They'll say, "You're the reason I feel this way." And the most dangerous part? They believe it. If they're angry, it's not, "I have unresolved rage." It's, "You made me angry." If they feel insecure, it's, "You're judging me." If they feel abandoned, it's, "You left me." Their emotions become your responsibility, and their unconscious becomes your battlefield. You don't care enough over time. That emotional looping turns into a pattern, a psychological game of hot potato, where you're always the one left holding the fire. Aristotle once said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." But some people fear that kind of knowing, because to truly know yourself, you must face the parts you'd rather hide, the parts that hurt. And for some, that's too much. So instead, they project those parts onto others, co-workers, friends, spouses, onto you. It's not always malicious. In fact, many of these people would be shocked if you told them what they were doing, because it's not conscious, it's survival. Their pain has nowhere to go, so it spills over, and you just happen to be the nearest shore. But here's the truth Stoicism reminds us of. You are responsible for your own mind, not for other people's wounds. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And in this case, the reaction isn't confrontation, it's awareness. You have to recognize the signs. If every time you speak your truth, someone cries. If every time you set a boundary, someone accuses you of being cruel. If every time you protect your peace, someone says you're abandoning them. That's not connection. That's emotional enmeshment. Plato warned about the danger of shadows, of mistaking illusion for reality. In his allegory of the cave, people believed the shadows on the wall were truth because it was all they had ever seen. Emotional projection works the same way. You start to believe you're the problem, that maybe you did say something wrong, that maybe you are selfish. You internalize the shadow someone else cast. So here's your daily act of philosophical self-defense. Pause. Pause when you feel that sudden shift, when your stomach tightens after a conversation, when you walk away feeling like you've been through a storm you didn't sign up for. And ask yourself, is this emotion actually mine? If the answer is no, if it doesn't originate from your choices, your values, your voice, drop it. That guilt, that shame, that weight, it's not your luggage. Don't carry it. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. And clarity, as the Stoics taught, is the root of peace. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But I'll add this, the life where you carry other people's emotional baggage isn't worth shrinking for. You can still be kind, you can still be compassionate, but you do not have to become the emotional landfill for people who refuse to take out their own trash. So the next time you feel heavy without reason, remember, kindness should never come at the cost of your own clarity. That's not love, that's sacrifice. And Stoicism reminds us, the first duty we owe is not to others, but to our own soul. There's a certain kind of person who always seems to get it right. Their words are measured, their posture composed, their life, at least from the outside, seems spotless, polished to perfection. They're never too emotional, never too opinionated, never too messy. And at first, it's magnetic. You're drawn in by their calm, their certainty, their air of control. You think, wow, they really have it all together. But then, something starts to feel off. It's subtle, not what they say, but what they don't. the way conversations never go deep, the way they nod instead of connect, laugh instead of feel. It's like you're speaking to a reflection, not a person. And suddenly you realize you're not with a human being, you're with a performance. Carl Jung had a name for this mask. He called it the persona, the image we show the world so we can function within it. It's not inherently bad. In fact, it's necessary. We all wear masks. We have to. You don't show the same face to your boss that you do to your closest friend. But the danger, Jung warned, is when we become the mask, when we confuse the role we play with the person we are. The Stoics spoke about this too, though in a different way. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, reminded himself daily, "Be not deceived. You are not your role, not your title. You are a soul carrying its own judgment." But some people forget that. They merge their worth with their image, and once they do, they can't tolerate anything that threatens that image. That's why vulnerability makes them squirm. That's why they dodge real emotion as if stepping around fire. Say something honest, they freeze. Cry in front of them, their face stiffens. Not because they don't care, but because they've buried their own emotions so deeply that they've forgotten how to hold space for anyone else's. And here's where it gets dangerous. When you're close to someone like this, someone who lives entirely through their mask, you start adapting. You begin editing your truth, not because they ask you to, but because you want to match their energy, to keep things smooth. So you hide your tears, you soften your opinions, you sand down your edges, you become less of yourself. Plato once wrote that truth is the beginning of every good thing. But in relationships like this, truth becomes a threat. Authenticity becomes a disturbance in the script. The unspoken rule becomes clear. Keep it clean, keep it cool, keep it controlled. The worst part? You might not even notice you're doing it. One day you just wake up feeling disconnected from others, from yourself, like you've been acting in a play you never auditioned for. This is the emotional cost of being close to someone overly identified with their persona. You don't just lose depth in the relationship, you lose depth within yourself. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." But that kind of knowing requires honesty, vulnerability, and messiness. And when you're around someone who avoids all of that, you start avoiding it too, just to keep the peace. So here's your check-in. How often do you censor yourself around them? Not for safety, but for approval. Not because you're afraid of hurting them, but because you're afraid of breaking their perfect image. If you're constantly watching your tone, your tears, your truth, you might not be in a relationship. You might be in a performance, and you weren't born to be a supporting actor in someone else's highlight reel. Socrates said, "The greatest way to live with honor is to be what we pretend to be." That means being real, taking off the mask, facing the discomfort of being human, and allowing others to do the same. Because here's the deeper truth. A relationship where you can't be real is a prison with soft cushions. You deserve more than that. You deserve a space where you don't have to filter your feelings, where you don't have to shrink to fit someone else's idea of perfect, where your mess isn't just tolerated, but met with presence. So if you find yourself constantly adjusting, constantly performing, always afraid to be fully seen, take a breath. And maybe, just maybe, It's time to step off that stage. There are people who carry themselves like lighthouses, steady, calm, composed. They don't shout, they don't slam doors, they don't break down or blow up. They're admired for their control, their maturity, their commitment to always doing what's right. They show up, do the work, keep the peace. And at first glance, it's easy to believe they've mastered life. But that silence, it's not always peace. Sometimes it's pressure, because beneath that smooth exterior, there's often a war, one they refuse to fight openly, a storm of feelings they've decided don't fit who they're supposed to be. Anger, envy, ambition, shame, grief, emotions society teaches us to hide, especially if we want to appear strong. So they bury them deep and build their identity on the illusion of being above it all. Carl Jung warned us about this. He called it the repressed shadow, the parts of ourselves we push down, ignore, or outright deny. But here's the catch. What we repress doesn't disappear. It waits, it builds, and eventually it demands to be seen. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And when that shadow finally surfaces, it's rarely gentle. It doesn't arrive as calm confession or clean emotion. It erupts. It leaks out through sarcasm, coldness, passive aggression. It hides in the judgments and subtle jabs, in the sharp tone you didn't expect, in the guilt trip wrapped inside a smile. And you, the person closest to them, become the target. Not because you deserve it, but simply because you're there, because you're safe enough to absorb what they refuse to admit they're carrying. Plato once said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." Emotional power is no different. These people have emotions they don't know what to do with. So instead of processing them, they let them rot beneath the surface. And what rots will eventually poison. You might start noticing small things first. An eye roll when you speak, a polite but dismissive tone, a subtle criticism disguised as humor. You question it, then you question yourself. You begin walking on emotional eggshells, even though no one's yelling. That's how this works. Quiet erosion. In Stoicism, we're taught to know ourselves deeply, to train our responses with reason and reflection, not suppression. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But many people misread that. They mistake suppression for strength. They confuse silence with control. But there's a difference, a vital one, between self-mastery and emotional avoidance. Here's what makes it tricky. From the outside, they look composed, grounded. They follow the rules. They say the right things. They show up on time. But beneath it, you can feel the tension, that quiet static in the air that you can't quite name. And they won't admit it, because their entire identity depends on not being the kind of person who loses control. Socrates once said, "The shortest and surest way to live with honor in the world is to be, in reality, what we appear to be." But these individuals have split themselves in two. The self they show the world, and the self they've locked in the basement of their psyche. And the longer that gap exists, the more pressure it builds. Eventually, that pressure needs a release. And that release doesn't always look like rage. Sometimes it looks like sabotage, withdrawal, cold detachment. And suddenly, you're the one left feeling anxious, insecure, or guilty, without even understanding why. So what do? First, Don't mistake composure for health. Calm is only peace when it's connected to honesty. Second, start paying attention to the micro-expressions, the clipped responses, the judgment hiding behind compliments, the subtle tension that creeps into the room. The smallest signs are often the loudest truths. They're telling you something. And finally, don't wait for the explosion. If you sense someone is repressing their emotions to dangerous levels, step back. Create space. Protect your energy. Because when someone refuses to deal with their shadow, they will always project it onto someone else. And that someone doesn't have to be you. As Epictetus taught, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. You can't control their inner war. You can only choose whether or not you stand in its path. Protect your peace. Not all danger comes with noise. Some of it whispers, and some of it wears a smile. There's a certain kind of person who always seems to have the right thing to say. They speak with conviction. They sound deeply principled, maybe even wise. At first, it feels like care, like concern. They say they want what's best for you, but somehow you always leave the conversation feeling smaller than when you walked in. They rarely raise their voice. They don't insult you directly. Instead, they wrap their criticism in compliments. They lace judgment with virtue. You hear things like, "I'm just trying to help," or "A real friend tells you the truth," or the classic, "You'll thank me later." But instead of feeling supported, you feel shame creeping in, like you've done something wrong just by being yourself. Carl Jung understood this pattern well. He warned that when people repress their darker impulses, their envy, their lust, their resentment, they begin projecting those traits onto others. They can't admit that those emotions live within them, so they go hunting for them in everyone else. Jung wrote, "The most dangerous things are not the conscious perversions, but the unconscious ones." In other words, the people who believe they're doing the most good are often the ones causing the deepest harm. Aristotle believed that true virtue lies in balance, the golden mean between extremes. But the people we're talking about don't live in balance. They live in extremes of judgment, masked as ethics. And the closer you get to them, the more you start to feel like you're on trial. Your choices are dissected. Your dreams are criticized. Your individuality is treated as rebellion. They're not trying to help you grow. They're trying to make you feel guilty. For growing outside the mold, they believe is acceptable. In Stoic philosophy, real morality doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from mastering yourself. Epictetus taught, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That means stepping away from the need for approval, even moral approval. Because sometimes people use values as a weapon, not to elevate others, but to avoid facing their own contradictions. And here's where it gets really tricky. These people genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. They don't see themselves as controlling. They think they're correcting, teaching, guiding. But what they're really doing is keeping their own shadow at bay by trying to clean up yours. Plato, in the Republic, warned about the danger of those who love the appearance of virtue more than the actual work of virtue itself. These people don't want truth. They want control, and they wrap that control in sacred language so you won't question it, so you'll internalize it. So eventually, you'll start second-guessing yourself every time you rest, speak up, or take a different path. The result? Their voice becomes your inner critic. You stop hearing your own thoughts. You hear theirs. You stop making choices out of clarity and start making them out of fear. Fear of disappointing their imagined standards. You become obedient to a rule book you never agreed to follow. And here's the truth they don't want you to know. Morality that's forced isn't morality, it's manipulation. If someone's guidance makes you shrink instead of expand, it's not loving, it's controlling. If their advice leaves you ashamed instead of empowered, it's not truth, it's projection. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." That includes people who sound wise but haven't done the deep, painful work of self-reflection. Because real morality doesn't need a spotlight, it doesn't need applause, and it certainly doesn't need to make others feel small. So ask yourself, do I feel more myself around this person or less? Do their words build me up, or do they subtly suggest I'm never enough? If someone's version of help consistently makes you feel ashamed for living your truth, that's not virtue, that's fear in disguise. Socrates said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." And yet, the moral controller walks through life acting as though they know everything about who you should be. That's not wisdom, that's arrogance. The kind of arrogance that isolates you from your own compass. You are not here to live by someone else's rigid rule book. You are here to grow, to fall, to learn, to rise again. And no one, no matter how righteous they sound, gets to stand in the way of that. So if their voice is drowning out your own, it's time to turn the volume down, reclaim your space. And remember, real moral strength comes from listening inward, not bending outward. Some relationships feel like home, others feel like weather. Sunny one moment, stormy the next, with no warning and no logic. One day you're embraced, the next you're pushed away. One minute you're the hero, the comfort, the joy, and the next you're the target of an emotion you never saw coming. You start tiptoeing through every conversation, wondering if this is the moment it all turns again. It's confusing, exhausting, and slowly it wears you down. The person in front of you doesn't always seem cruel. Sometimes they're deeply affectionate. They laugh with you, dream with you, even cry in your arms. And then, without any clear reason, they flip. Their tone changes, their words cut, their body stiffens, and you're left wondering what you did wrong, even when deep down you know you didn't do anything at all. Carl Jung gave us a powerful metaphor for this. He described emotional complexes as if they were small personalities living inside the psyche, fragments of pain, memory, and emotion that operate independently of our conscious self. When one of these is triggered, it takes the wheel. It drives reactions, decisions, behavior, while the person affected becomes a passenger in their own mind. They're not faking it. They genuinely don't understand why they reacted that way, why a simple comment spiraled into an argument, why a normal day turned into chaos. Because in those moments, they're not responding to you. They're responding to something much older, an echo of a past wound. But here's the truth that hurts. Even if they don't mean to hurt you, it still hurts. Even if it's not about you, you're still affected. Plato once said, "We can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy is when men are afraid of the light." The light in this case is self-awareness, the courage to face our triggers instead of letting them rule our lives. When someone refuses to look at their pain, they keep projecting it outward, onto people who didn't cause it and can't fix it. And if you care about them, it's easy to slip into the role of caretaker. You become the one who understands, the one who absorbs. You learn to anticipate their moods, manage their stress, avoid their triggers. You think that if you can just do everything right, the explosions will stop, but they don't. And in the process, something else begins. Quietly, slowly, almost invisibly. You start to disappear. You stop speaking freely. You stop asking for what you need. You tell yourself, this isn't the right time, or they've been through a lot, or maybe I'm being too sensitive. But that's how emotional self-abandonment begins, not all at once, but in small steps of silence. The Stoics believed that peace comes from self-discipline, not from controlling others, but from mastering your own reactions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." That's a powerful reminder for anyone learning to regulate their own emotions. But for people ruled by complexes, that skill doesn't come naturally. They feel and they act. There's no pause in between. And when you're on the receiving end of that long enough, you start to feel like you're living inside someone else's emotional story. Their past becomes your present. Their wounds shape your reality. And before you know it, you start blaming yourself for how they feel. But here's the truth. Their healing is not your responsibility. Your empathy doesn't make you their therapist. Your love doesn't mean you have to become their emotional regulator. Socrates believed that the key to a meaningful life was knowing what is and isn't yours. And if someone can't manage their emotional storms, it is not your job to hold up an umbrella and hope for sunshine. You can care, you can support, but you cannot sacrifice your emotional safety to save someone who refuses to do their inner work. So how do you know when you've gone too far? When you start editing yourself more than expressing yourself. When you're always monitoring their mood instead of checking in with your own. When your days start to feel like walking a tightrope, careful, 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 not because of anything you did, but because you've been conditioned to keep the peace at all costs. That's not connection, that's survival. And you were not made to live in emotional survival mode. You were made to feel safe, to be heard, seen, and understood. To exist in relationships where emotions are shared, not thrown. Where growth is mutual, not one-sided. Where you're not required to be a mind reader just to get through the day. So if you found yourself in a relationship, romantic, familial, or even a friendship, where love comes with landmines, take a breath. Ask yourself, am I living to keep them stable or to be myself? Because as Epictetus reminds us, no man is free who is not master of himself. And if they are not mastering themselves, they'll eventually try to manage you. You didn't break them. Don't try to fix them. Let them take the journey of self-awareness that every human being must take. And in the meantime, take yours. One that leads you back to clarity, to balance, to the emotional safety you deserve. You are not their emotional babysitter. You are not the glue for someone else's brokenness. You are allowed to walk away from chaos, no matter how kind the source appears to be. Some people never raise their voice. They never throw blame or start fights. In fact, they might seem gentle, soft-spoken, maybe even fragile. They speak quietly. They ask for very little, all at once. But over time, they take everything. At first, you don't notice it. You're just being kind, just showing up, just answering that late-night message, just staying a little longer when they're upset, just helping them through one more rough day. You tell yourself, I'm a good person. This is what I do. But one day, you wake up feeling tired, not just physically, but in your bones. A kind of emotional fatigue that lingers even after a full night's sleep. You notice that every time they're around, your chest feels a little tighter, your mind a little foggier, your energy a little dimmer. And worst of all, you've started to feel guilty for needing space. This is what emotional enmeshment looks like. This is what happens when someone doesn't just need support. They need your soul to survive. It's not always malicious. It's not about manipulation in the classic sense. It's more like dependence disguised as connection. Carl Jung didn't use the term psychic vampire, but he described this dynamic in depth. He called it a symbiotic relationship, where one person becomes psychologically fused with another, unable to define their own identity without constant reflection from the other. In simpler terms, they need you to exist. They survive by attaching themselves to your presence, your stability, your strength. But there's a cost, and that cost is you. Plato once said, "The worst form of injustice is pretended justice." In the same way, the worst form of emotional dependence often hides behind the mask of love, care, or closeness. These people don't scream or push you away. They pull you in, so deeply, so subtly, that you don't even realize you've crossed the line from supportive partner to emotional caretaker. They are always in a crisis, always going through something. And somehow, the story never changes. You offer advice, they nod, but don't act. You offer time, they need more. You offer empathy, it becomes expectation. And slowly, without realizing it, you start shaping your days around their needs. You sacrifice the small things, your time, your peace, your interests. Then the bigger things, your truth, your boundaries, your sense of self. Marcus Aurelius warned us to protect our inner fortress, to guard the mind like a citadel. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, he wrote. But in relationships like this, your thoughts aren't your own anymore. They're filtered through someone else's distress. Your mind becomes crowded with their stories, their worries, their chaos. And here's what's hardest to accept. These people don't really want to grow. They say they do. They might even believe they do. But they've learned that being in crisis earns them something more comforting than change. It earns them you. Epictetus, the Stoic teacher, said that true freedom comes from self-responsibility. No man is free who is not master of himself. But in these kinds of bonds, the person you're trying to help refuses that mastery. They don't want to stand, they want to lean, always. And if you allow it, they'll lean until you collapse. The longer you stay, the more your identity begins to blur. You stop knowing where you end and they begin. Their pain becomes your mood. Their silence becomes your anxiety. Their dependence becomes your prison. That's when you need to pause and ask the question that changes everything. Am I helping, or am I just being drained? It's not cold to ask that. It's not selfish. It's clarity. It's what the Stoics called living according to nature, living with truth and balance, not martyrdom. Socrates believed that self-knowledge was the foundation of all wisdom. So here's some self-knowledge that matters. You cannot carry someone who refuses to walk. You can offer a hand, but if they anchor themselves to your back, you'll both drown. And before you tell yourself, "But they need me," remember this: true love doesn't consume. It creates space. Space to breathe, to grow, to be. You deserve relationships that feed you, not ones that feed on you, ones that feed on you. You deserve peace that doesn't come with a price. You deserve to be whole, not hollowed out by someone else's fear of standing on their own. So start reclaiming your energy. Start returning to yourself. Because the moment you do, you'll remember what you've known all along. You were never put here to be someone's emotional life raft. You were born to rise. And real love, real connection, rises with you. The most dangerous weight is the one you carry in silence, when your heart is heavy, but your mouth says nothing. So here's your reminder. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to choose clarity over chaos, truth over illusion, and strength over sacrifice. If this message found you at the right time, there's a reason. And if you're ready to go even deeper, there's another video waiting for you on the screen right now, one that will help you continue this journey of awareness and inner power. Thank you for being a part of Nexus Mind. Here, we don't just talk about philosophy, we live it, one insight at a time. Take what resonated, leave what didn't, and carry forward with intention. We'll see you again soon.